Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar show that talks about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to the big mystery that we're all part of, to the sacred journey that we walk together on earth. And I love to hear people's stories about how they kind of made realization about who they are in truth and the unfolding of that realization. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and this kind of conversation is my sweet spot. I love having this whether I'm on the show or whether we're just doing it together in group circle, because it's so much fun to do it together when we can be respectful and honoring of each other's journeys. And that's the kind of environment I've created in my butterfly circle. So if you're interested in that, that's always starting up in 3 points in the year, January, May, and September. So depending on when you listen to this, you can check out my website at carriehummingbird.com, Kerri, hummingbird.com, and check out Butterfly Circle, reinvent yourself, and see if that's something for you. So today's guest, I'm really excited because this is going to be a fascinating conversation, I know it, is Jenn Taylor of Mom of 18 and the Naked Podcaster. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you. Wow. That was a great introduction. All right.
So let me tell you a little bit more about, if that didn't grip you already, we have more to say. So Jenn has been a speaker on and off for about 30 years. Her favorite topic to speak on is compounding joy, bringing fast, easy, actionable exercises to people to increase their joy and gratitude. Jenn has 15 years in the foster care sector as both a parent and a trainer, and has written a blog for over 8 years and is a published author of a self-help memoir, Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess. Jenn is also a partner to an amazing man in Reno, Nevada, a runner, minimalist, and a healthy lifestyle enthusiast. And what a special person it takes to guide 18 other humans in your own home. I guide a lot of people, but they don't all live with me. So it makes it easier because I love you people, but you don't live with me. So it's easier to guide you along your journey. But 18 that have lived with you throughout, that is amazing.
And I'll preface this, and it won't make much difference, by saying that we've had 11 or 12 kids at one time, a lot, often 8 or 9, even more, because the number's gone down slowly as the kids have gotten older. We've never had all 18 together in the same place at the same time. The most we've ever had is 14 at Christmas 4 years ago in 2000. Well, it was 2016, I think. So yeah, it's a lot. There are a lot of them, a lot of kids.
A lot of kids. So that's, how did you get started doing that? How did you end up having so many children?
That was never the plan. Someone asked me that recently, like, did you plan? I'm like, I wasn't 9 or 10 thinking like, when I grow up, I want to have 18 kids. It never really unfolded that way. I knew at 15, I had my first OBGYN appointment. I was actually a virgin. So my OBGYN was the first one that got below the belt. Lucky guy. But he told me that I might not be able to have kids. And it's interesting now that I'm 49, thinking back to that with a lot of life experience. Like, what did he see in that appointment? There was no ultrasound. There was nothing concrete, but something in him. And it was a really, really good experience for me. And it's something that kind of stuck with me, that he said, you're having issues already. I want to kind of tell you to expect to have fertility issues. And that was cool for a couple reasons. One, because if I had never had a fertility issue, it would have no big deal, no harm, no foul. But because he said that I was not surprised when I had fertility. I went through infertility. And so I did a year of infertility. I had 7 surgeries. I got everything up to in vitro. And I did end up getting pregnant 7 times, actually, overall. But every doctor that I've seen, every OB or specialist that I've seen says you shouldn't be able to get pregnant. And if you get pregnant, you shouldn't be able to carry the pregnancies, including my hysterectomy. The doctor was like, I don't know how you ever got pregnant and maintained it. And I'm like, well, it's this thing we call sex, but maybe it's not in your book or divine intervention, or whatever it was. It was great, though, that this OB at the age of 15 made this statement that I heard. And I knew that I might have trouble conceiving or maintaining pregnancies. And so what that taught me was that if I wanted a family, I could get it in a different way, and that that was totally okay. And because I had grown up in dysfunction and I wasn't in foster care, I should have been in foster care, but wasn't. So I lived through all of those things that foster kids live through. And my third grade teacher made such a difference to me. So over time, I'm picking up all these tools in my toolbox that you don't realize. My third grade teacher made such a pivotal difference to me. It completely changed the trajectory of my life. Things after third grade got significantly worse, but I already knew I was worth it to her. And that was kind of all I needed. Then fast forward, I'm 15, and he says, you probably will there's a possibility you'll be infertile. So I think in life, if we look back with hindsight, we realize that some seeds were planted if we just stopped long enough to listen and realize that we're kind of building a toolbox. And I think I was just lucky that those things stuck with me enough that between this teacher who made a big difference and this man who said I might not be able to have kids, I was like, cool, I'll have a family through foster care. No big deal. And I'm not saying I did not have emotional trauma going through infertility, because that would be a complete lie. It's physically and emotionally very difficult to go through. I had difficult pregnancies. My 7th pregnancy, I lost twins at 19 weeks and had 3 surgeries, including a hysterectomy. Those 3 surgeries due to that miscarriage, I was dead on the table. I had 5 blood transfusions. I mean, there's a lot of trauma involved in the process for a lot of us, but emotionally, I kind of felt like this is just the way it's supposed to work out. And so I didn't have a lot of negative baggage from growing up in dysfunction or from infertility treatments. I wasn't consumed by that like I know a lot of people are. And I don't know if that's personality or just the way I processed things. And again, I'm not minimizing, saying it was not physically or emotionally really, really difficult, but I just felt like it was okay that my path was different. So that's how things started. I did get pregnant through infertility. And after that, I kind of thought, I'm done. If I get pregnant on my own, that's great. Otherwise, I don't need any outside assistance. Thank you very much. And for people who go into the in vitro portion of infertility, I did like 10 months and 7-day surgeries, which was really difficult, but nothing, comparatively speaking, for women who go through significantly more. I knew that wasn't my path. I just knew when I hit the point for infertility where they said, okay, next up is in vitro, I was like, yeah, this is where our relationship is going to end, because that's not the right path for me. So I don't think that I'm an incredibly intuitive person, but maybe I just listen a little bit better than some people. I knew I wasn't going to go in vitro. So I went foster care instead. And through foster care, I adopted 5, and I had 5 kids that I call my extras. 3 of them aged out with me. 1 of them was long-term, and 1 was a foreign exchange student. And so I've been mom. They're certainly my kids. They never reunified with their parents, and they never were adopted by me, although that would have been fine. That would have been a great thing. I would have adopted them. So I got 14 that way. I was divorced in this process, which was, I didn't get married thinking I was going to get divorced. So I was single, but I actually did 1 of the 5 adoptions and 3 of those extra kids when I was single. So here I was, 14 kids, 9 at home, single. I stopped doing foster care after a couple of years. And my daughter, who's now 27, and a mutual friend of ours went on this crusade to fix me up with the right guy. It was I was not super excited at the time, but they had a really good time with it, and it was really fun. And they fixed me up with Dane. Dane has 4 kids, and his wife had died. And so that's where 18 came from. So it was kind of a crazy, you think everything's going to be point A to point B. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. It's going to be beautiful. I'm going to be a great mom. It's all fantastic. And it's like, it's not point A to point B in a straight line. It's like this windy road up a mountain, and you need a Sherpa, and, there's all these tangents. And so that was mine. But I expected it to kind of go that way. I didn't expect to be able to give birth to 4 babies. That was a bonus for me. People are like, "Oh, you took in extras," and I'm like, "No, actually, I gave birth to extras because I really wasn't anticipating to be able to do that 4 times." And it's 18, which is huge, but I said no more than I said yes. And when I said yes, I had to feel like these were the kids that belonged with me. And when I'm in it for the long haul. So that's kind of the way it went for me. There were kids that did come in and out, but for the most part, when I said yes, those are the kids that are part of that group of 18. They stayed.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I know for a fact, just from my experience, that sometimes it's you can have a deeper connection or a deeper mentoring relationship or love relationship with a parent who's not your biological parent.
Hmm. Oh, I absolutely did. I am one of the relationships I was in college. I was very close to his parents, and I refer to them as my adopted parents. And by far, I mean, I have an okay relationship with my mom. I had almost no relationship with my father, and it was absolutely the worst. When he passed away, it was a relief. Like, now this man can't hurt anyone else. It's not only the good die young, like, thank God that he's not around anymore to torture people. He was not a pleasant man to be around. And my closest relationship was with, I guess he was kind of like my father-in-law sort of figure, but he was my dad. And when he died, it was devastating. So I only had him for 11 years, from the age of 19, to 30. And it was devastating when he died. So absolutely, it's blood. And, I raised these kids that kind of came from everywhere. And I let them know that from the beginning. I adopted 3 at birth and breastfed them. And I adopted 1 at 2 and 1 at 5. And so these weren't kids they didn't all come to me as older teenage kids, although a couple of them did. But they knew growing up where they came from, and that our family, it's not like people ask, "Oh, it's like yours, mine, and ours." Well, Dane and I didn't have children together. He had his own and I had my own, but we've just gathered them like hook or crook. We just kind of I built the family that I wanted, and there was no number or expectation. I took it a day at a time, a phone call at a time, a child at a time. And my goal was that I just wanted to make a difference to that one, because my teacher made a difference to me. I was one of probably hundreds that this woman made a difference to, but she made a difference to this one. And so my goal was just to make a difference to that one. And 18 kids later, that's kind of how it ended up. But I think sometimes in the journey, when we get to like where I'm at now at 49, looking back, I feel blessed that I listened to things that people said, and I kind of put them in my back pocket. And I'm glad that I realized the people that were making a positive difference in my life, even as like an 8 or 9-year-old kid. Like, I knew my teacher was doing something pivotal. I didn't understand what she was doing or how or why or what it would mean. But that year in 3rd grade, little girl me, I knew that this woman was something spectacular, and I clung to that. And I actually found her and re-met her 19 years ago, and she didn't remember me at all. I had my 3rd grade pictures. Here I am, and nothing. And someone asked me, "Well, doesn't that hurt your feelings?" No, it doesn't. This is the lesson from that. She didn't see me as this poor kid who needed extra help. She was just like technically doing her job, but it was also who she is. She was being a 3rd grade teacher, an exceptional 3rd grade teacher. That's what she was doing. And she was giving herself to these kids every single day. And I happened to be lucky to count myself among them. And just in being herself and doing what she did made this pivotal difference. So the fact that she didn't remember me was great. She was just her being her in her life, making a difference. So what does that mean for the rest of us? We can just be ourselves in our life every day, making a huge impact, and probably a lot of the time not even knowing that we are. And so I took away a lot from that there are people always watching you. and that you can make a huge impact sometimes without even knowing it. So just go along your life being yourself, knowing that you could be touching somebody in a pretty amazing way, like life-changing way, without ever even knowing that it happened. So lots of good life lessons there, but it ended up she turned it into 18 kids.
Wow. Well, that's pretty incredible. I would say that I am just kind of amazed that you were able to manage that many kids at one time. I mean, like even just the nine. I mean, come on, that's a lot. Single with nine kids.
Yeah.
Wow, that's that's a lot. I don't even know how to earn money to pay for all that and take care of them and be around them, and like that's kind of mind-boggling to me. How did that work for you? I mean, how did your going from a couple into one, I mean, I can understand a couple going into that and saying, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to commit to this and then we're going to provide and we're going to work it out together. But then to go down to one person with that many responsibility for that many kids, just the logistics alone for that many kids is a lot to make sure that, homework's getting done and whatever else that needs to happen.
I think I learned to have good systems when the kids were really little before the divorce. I remember looking at my kitchen sink and thinking, how are there this many cups?
Like
It's like
after 1 hour.
I just like what's going on here with all of these cups? So I color coded all my kids. I mean, I'm presented with a situation where I'm like, I cannot wash 30 cups per person a day. And I don't even want to have that many cups. And so my solution was everyone was color coded. So they all got to pick a color. And as kids were added in, I just had a lot of extra colors. So I bought these plastic, it's like Rubbermaid, right? Like these plastic sets where you'd have a plate, a bowl, and a cup. And each of them had two. And I know if the purple cup's out, it was Brie. I mean, so I think early on, because in the beginning, you've got to remember, I'll put something else in perspective too. Dane's kids and my kids there's 13. So if you remove the extras, and a couple of those extras are older, 33, 31, and my oldest biological was 27. 13 kids, 12 of them were born in 10 years. So, I have a 27-year-old, we have two 23-year-olds, two 22-year-olds, two 21-year-olds, three 19-year-olds. I mean, like, we have a lot of one 18, one 17. I mean, we have a lot of kids in a very condensed. Then we have an 8-year gap, and I have a 9-year-old now, turning 10 next month. So, and then some of the extra kids in that age range, there were two others. So there were 13 of them in 10 years, right? So they weren't all living in the house all the time. There were lots of different situations where they were always part of our family, but not necessarily living in the house. And I had 11 or 12 for years in the house. And so on the front end of that, what that looked like is 3 kids in diapers. I was always breastfeeding like 2. I was breastfeeding 1 and pregnant, or, I mean, I think the thing that I learned is that I chose this life. I chose it. So if I don't like it, I should do something and make different choices, because it was all about the choices I was making that led me to this life. But I loved it. So part of why I did a good job is because I really freaking loved the crazy, fun, wild adventure that I was on. And if we wanted to make changes, and we did, then we made them to make things better, like color coding everybody's stuff. And still, like, it's my kids, like Nikki's always yellow and Taylor's always blue. It's their favorite color. They've kind of kept it in there as a theme in their life. Like, so I somehow scarred them with their colored cups, But I think we have to make ways that things work. I had this Rubbermaid container in my entryway for probably like 20 something years. I grew up in Vermont, lived in Alaska for 10 years, lived in Hawaii for a couple of years. These are places you don't wear your shoes in the house. So I'm very conditioned for my whole life. You take off your shoes at the door. And having a lot of kids, well, doesn't that make sense? Because they're not tracking dirt in. So you kick off your shoes and put them in a Rubbermaid bucket. And that's how we contain the mess. And we had hooks, and everybody, I mean, like 12 backpacks and probably 24 pairs of shoes at least. And I just figured out ways to organize things well. And I'm a minimalist, you mentioned. So kind of weeding out all the things that we didn't need was huge. That was huge. So we had 12 kids and 2,200 square feet in a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house for a really long time.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, we had 5 boys in one room, 4 girls, 3 girls, 3 girls, I think is how it was. Um, oh no, we had 5, 4, 3, and then our bedroom. That's how we had it. So we had 5 boys, 4 girls, 3 girls, and we set up bunk beds, and they had bunk beds and dressers in their room. Period. That is all you have in your room. And we use the closets for dressers and hung stuff above them. You just start to get creative about how you do things because people live in a lot less space. But it was like, I'm a minimalist Costco style because it was a volume business.
Yeah, that many kids is definitely a volume
Yeah,
business.
and you just figure it out. I mean, older kids shadow younger kids. You need to read for 30 minutes. You need to be read to for 30 minutes, and that's done. And so I was very organized with my time. I was very organized with my space. We hit a point where we were overwhelmed and minimized a lot, and that reduced a lot of stress because it kind of got rid of all of the excess. And people say, "Oh, I have 13 people or 15 people for Thanksgiving." That was my everyday for years and years and years and years and years. I cooked for like 15 people basically almost every single day. I made their birthday cakes from scratch, their Halloween costumes. I mean, like I really chose it and I loved it. And it was a huge part of what I did. I stayed home for 10 years. I was a stay-at-home mom. When I got divorced, there were a couple of years where he wasn't present in the kid's life for extenuating circumstances. When he kind of came back into their life, and 7 of the kids with my ex-husband, he slowly got half custody. And then that flipped the other way where I ended up I've had more custody of the kids overall. But I wanted him to be a really great parent, even if that meant 20% of the time, like be fantastic 20% of the time, then suck 50. So the good thing also was that except for that initial couple of years where he wasn't around, he paid child support every single month, and he's a doctor. So he had a profession that provided more of an income, and I got child support. So that was part of how I functioned. And then I didn't finish college, so I had 3 jobs for part of the time. And then I had 2 jobs a lot. And then I had a job and I was an entrepreneur at the same time, building a business until I could stop. And so there were a lot of different things in there, but I think you just figure out, like the color coding of the cups, you figure out a way to do it. My kids always lived in a house. I have nothing against living in a trailer park or an apartment, but I wanted to provide a house and a backyard. We always had a dog. And I always figured out how to do it. And honestly, I look back and just financially, I have no idea, except it worked out. I wasn't on, I didn't sign up for services. I always did it on my own by myself. I worked very, very hard at parenting and loving my kids. And I worked very, very hard at making as much money as I could to provide for them. And I think, again, it went back to, I chose the life and I really loved it. So
I also think, wow, because when I'm listening to you, of course, I'm thinking about the way I look at things in my own family has been really different. Like, for example, um, I have a blended family now. And so I have 2 sons that are older, that are 17 and 20. My husband has 2 younger kids that are 11 and 12. And then we came into this house 4 years ago or so together. And so we had to rejuggle everything around. And for a little while, like my older one was like flew the coop because he's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go be
mhm.
independent. And then he came back after that kind of, right? So then by now all the bedrooms got shuffled. And so my, it's like the where my kids come from, they don't think about, they're not going to share bedrooms. Like they're just not like that. It's no. So he's in the living room because my other one won't share a bedroom with him. So there's this like, and I see that behavior, right? Like I see that, and I think like once you've already domesticated them in one way, it's really challenging to undomesticate that and put them in a different way where they make space for their sibling, right? Like they're not going to do that. It's not.
I was lucky because my kids, I had 9 at home and one was moving out. So I was down to 8 when we combined, and then he and his 4 moved in. And it was difficult for all of us because I had done foster care for all these years. I had never taken a sibling group of 4 that had a parent that was a really great functioning parent. It's kind of easier to like just cut the parents out and deal with just the kids. But I had this like amazing dad, amazing, who parented differently than I did. And 4 kids. He had 2 boys and 2 girls. My kids were used to, they had been raised doing foster care. So I had just stopped. When we met, I had only stopped a year or so prior to that. So I think my kids were more used to having more of a revolving door or kids coming in and staying for long term. 4 was still hard. It was still more than we had ever done at one point. And I had a sibling group of 3, but it happened a little bit more slowly. So it felt a little bit different. This was like 4, boom. They are moving in Sunday and we're moving forward. There was no foreplay on that one at all. And also they were teenagers or becoming teenagers. And that made it difficult. There's a lot of estrogen and testosterone going on. And I was lucky.
That's for sure.
Yeah. His 2 boys shared a room and his 2 girls shared a room. Now, putting those 2 boys in with 3 other boys, really freaking hard. It was hard.
I was going to say,
It was hard.
Got to be hard, especially at that age, because they want more independence and more space, personal space, not less.
I think we were lucky because I think we did it really well. And the house that we lived in at that time was set up where it actually had 3 different living rooms or living spaces. And one was a really long rectangular one that was cut into 2 kind of automatically by this doorway. And then we had this other one. So what I did was in one of them, I removed all of the furniture that was in there and they brought theirs in. And in the other 2 sections, we took some stuff out and moved things around. And the kids helped us create that space. We spend more time in the kitchen, dining, living room areas than anywhere else. So we just kind of, the switch for them, his kids more than my kids, and this was years ago, was that the bedrooms for sleeping. And if you want personal space, that's one option. My bedroom is also one option. So when that door's shut and we're in bed, it better be an emergency, like if it's sleeping time. But other than that, we really kind of opened up our bedroom and our bathroom. If we weren't using it, you need to ask. But it was a place that people could, it's kind of like unused wasted space. You use it to sleep. So in all the other hours, create it so I had a desk in there, like this big long desk at the foot of our bed that had nothing on it. So bring your stuff in, shut the door, have some space, because everybody needs that. And then we had so they had bedroom space. And then we had these 3 living rooms. We had a great yard. We lived in this really cool neighborhood. There's a park down the street. So in some ways, maybe it forced them outside a little more, which I don't think is a bad thing. And in other ways, I think we just created the space around how they all wanted it to function. And that worked really well. So, we would have and this is the advent of technology was here and alive and well. So we had an Xbox and a Wii and a PlayStation, and we had them at 3 different locations. So kids could kind of pair up and do things. And I'm really blessed. I think because Dane and I, we really did a good job blending our families. And when we realized our parenting was different, our styles were different, we didn't realize that our goals were the same. We wanted the same outcome, and we had the same amount of drive and love to get there. And so when you kind of figure that out, you're like, okay, so what are we doing differently? Are we saying the same thing in different ways, essentially? And yes, there's some of that. So you kind of figure out how to speak the same language. So you're saying the same thing in the same ways. And then when we have differences, we deferred. I'm like, you're going to have to check in with your dad on that. This is what I think. He may feel differently about it, and I'm totally okay deferring. And he did the same for me. And to some degree, there was your kid and my kid, because if it was one of his kids or one of my kids, he should have final say. I'm not going to come storming in and take over and tell him, well, you suck and my way is better. I can't believe you're parenting your kid this way. We just graciously took a step back and deferred to each other on that. And I think because we did that and we asked for input so much from the kids who were teenagers, some of them, two of them were seniors in high school. So, you know, and two of them were sophomores, and, you know, I mean, they were getting older. They wanted to start making their own decisions. We looked at the blending of our families as a great opportunity for them to start decision making in a household to some degree. And, you know, I had a chore wheel. Everybody helped contribute to cleaning. Everybody helps contribute to cooking. We rotate through that. I am always part of all the cleaning and all the cooking. Dana and I were always present for that. But it would be me with two other kids and him paired up with two other kids. And so I think it was so much more community based, I guess, in our approach, that they had a lot of say. They could tell us about the things that they really didn't like. And I have a son who's autistic, and that created a lot of friction. And so, you know, if you want, I don't love kids sleeping on the couch, but if you just need to get out and you want to sleep on the couch, throw a blanket down and sleep on the couch. I mean, to a certain degree, it's no big deal. If I'm up at 4:30 to run and you're complaining that I'm bothering you, don't sleep on the couch. I mean, like, you know, so we had a lot of tolerance up to a certain point. And I think there was a lot of give and take. We had family council a lot. And we just made decisions. And now, years later, 4 of our kids rent a house together. And 2 of our kids rent a house together. They have other roommates other than the 2 of them. So there's 4 people living in each house, but 4 siblings in one and 2 in another. And my daughter, who's a senior, who's 18 in a couple of months, is planning on moving into that house where the 2 kids are. And interestingly, I mean, they're all like, I'm your best friend today and I hate you tomorrow. One of those, like, siblings are siblings. But they've all become so close that if I don't think about which ones are his and which ones were adopted and which ones came as teenagers and which ones, I won't even, they're just my kids. And so I think over time, you know, I'll still defer to him if it's one of his kids, like, wow, this is a tough situation. How are you going to handle it? And do you want my input, sort of thing. And so, yeah, they're all really, really close, and they all share houses together, and they kind of rotate who they share houses with. So, like, one of my sons just got kicked out because he's a slob. And another
I wondered about that. Like, there's some level of honesty, right? Like, okay, you are not holding up your end of the bargain here, so you need to go.
You know, I think our kids got that from us. When they turn 18 and graduate, it's not a prerequisite that you move out, but the rules change because now you're an adult. So you're still on the tour wheel, you're still picking up kids, you're still helping out. You live in this house, so it's not going to function any different. We don't charge them rent initially. Their responsibilities stay the same. They can come and go, but, like, we have more expectations because now you're an adult. So I'm never going to clean your dishes up or pick up after you. Like, it ends. And for me, it's a super easy switch. And it's like I flip the switch. Like, I'm not helping you with this stuff. If you ask me, hey mom, can you switch my laundry? I'll do it just like I would expect you to for me. But they have, their accountability has shifted into an adult. Like, if you moved in with me and rented a room, we'd sit down and go over the ground rules, and they do change. And you might not like them as much, but it's a free ride. So you might be wise to stay. But in a big family, I think they all really wanted their own space and to get out. And just like your son, every one of them has moved out and they know better. Like, yeah, you guys are old and you don't know what you're talking about. And I have this whole thing figured out. Right. And they all come back. Every one of them has come back.
Yeah. It's been a very interesting journey, to say the least. But I think that, you know, I always wanted my kids to have those interesting journeys early, early in life. I did the opposite. I followed all the rules and I was the good girl for, like, most of that time, like, kind of like obsessively, and tried to do everything I was supposed to be doing according to my parents. And then that exploded, you know, when I was 38 or 40. So, yeah, because I based, you know, my whole first relationship was sort of like the same model. So I, you know, not exactly, but it was, you know, it was that karma relationship, and I kept that going on for like a long time. And then these kids come out of that model, right? And so then I totally radically changed who I am through this massive transformation. and then brought in a new man who's in that paradigm with 2 little kids that are in that. Wow. Like,
Right.
trying to make it all come together in the family, that I've experienced firsthand how challenging that can be. And also, like, when, you start to see things like in your case, the ground rules, the kids already came in knowing they were going to share a room. Like, there was never any kid that's like, I get my own room. Whereas the paradigm that's my kids had was, because that's just the paradigm I grew up in. Like, everybody gets their own room, and you've got to provide as a parent for everybody gets their own room. And that's just, and then they get presents, and they get a computer, and then they get this, and then they get that, and then they have all this other stuff. And so my kids are super entitled. And it's because that is the way that it came through, my conditioning and my domestication, except that, I always had an appreciation. I always I got a lot of stuff from my dad, and I was always, very, very privileged in that way. My dad always provided, but I always had this like intense gratitude for like, wow, thank you for doing that.
This
And
generation does not.
if they don't, like, I had this like, maybe it's because my mom was the way she was. I kind of knew like, wow, I'm really lucky to have this guy who's really kind, who's doing all this nice stuff. Because if it was up to my mom, I probably wouldn't be getting any of that stuff, So it's sort of like I had this feeling like maybe I wouldn't be getting stuff if it wasn't for my dad. So I think, yeah, these kids don't have that. Like, they just don't understand that, that this was a really huge gift that they were able to land in a family where they were able to get a home, and not only just one room, but 2, because there's rooms over at their dad's house, right? So not just one room, but like 2 whole rooms.
Yeah, it's a lot different. I know because my oldest biological daughter's 27, and now we have one, she'll turn 10 and Bree will turn 28 within a short period of time. So having almost 18 years different between 2 kids, it's that part, it's a different generation, and I don't like this new generation. that entitled, and it sprinkles through, that millennial age. It is different. What I've learned though is that I can do the best that I can do. I know my kids know how to cook, they know how to clean, they know how to respect other people. I know all the lessons that I taught them. They know how to share, they know how to help. They were raised with compassion and gratitude, and that people have less. And that doesn't mean that they have to act on any of those things. And they're
Right.
also different. I'd go to one of my girls' houses, and her house is immaculate, and you go in your bathroom and I'm like, oh my God, something in the tub is trying to communicate with me. I'm like, when's the last time you cleaned your tub? But it doesn't bother her. Like, she can't stand to touch a raw egg, but her tub looks like alien growth is happening in there, and where other kids keep in the shared house, the bedroom space is immaculate, but a slob in the community space. Why would you do that to other people? If you want yours, it's interesting to see the things that they pick up, but I know that they've been taught. So what they do with it and the kind of people they are as adults, that's kind of on them. That's their journey. And we did, just like you saying you want them to make mistakes early on, we encourage our kids to move out on their own. And if they want to do that, financially, we don't support them. And like when my kids turn 18, they know we don't exchange Christmas gifts. We have such a huge family. For them to exchange Christmas gifts would be tremendously stressful. So I'm like, I don't need anything. I don't want you to spend 2 hours in frustration and $20 you don't really have to try to figure out what to get me on Christmas so that I feel good that you did it. Don't do it. Just don't. How about we're nice? It's kind of like the Valentine's Day roses that cost 3 times the amount. How about you're just nice to me a few times during the year because you feel like it, and not buy me roses on a day that you're supposed to that cost 3 times more so I can show my coworkers. So I kind of have that mentality. I don't do Christmas presents and birthday presents. Once the kids turn 18 and move out, I prefer to meet them and treat them for lunch a couple times a year. And like, if I'm like, hey, is there anything that you need? Yeah, I really need a vacuum cleaner. I can put $50 towards your vacuum cleaner. I would prefer to do nice things during the year for the kids when I have the ability to, than the opposite, where I'm like I'm scraping up money to spend $100 on 18 people who I don't even know what to get for half of them, and who can probably buy their own stuff on their own. So who cares? Why am I stressing myself out? So to eliminate that stress for myself and everyone involved. We don't exchange Christmas
So
presents
that's
and
part
birthday
of
gifts.
minimalism for you then.
It's part of minimalism and it's part of stress reduction, which is part of minimalism. Yeah. So, and we are minimalists. I mean, our next step is that we want to live full time in an RV. It's not like, oh, my house went from 4,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet. It's like, we're minimalists. Dane and I are. Our kids weren't necessarily minimalists. So we taught them that buying fewer things that are higher quality is a better idea. Most people would agree with that. Um, Purchasing a vehicle and maintaining it, so preventative medicine, is a really good idea. I can't make you do any of this stuff because a lot of them are hoarders. I mean, like, they want all the things and all the stuff and the big house and the car and the 2.4 kids, and that's fine. But we've taught them that, minimizing the things you have in your life and the amount that you need to take care of and maintain is less stress. So it was a combination of like, there's not really much that I need. And if there is something, I can probably buy it for myself. And a lot of the kids are in that same position. So please don't spend time and effort trying to figure out a Christmas present. Or worse, I call you, I'm like, hey, Carrie, give me 3 ideas you want for Christmas. And you're getting one of the 3. Surprise, like, we just decided to be nice to each other and do nice things for each other all year round, then focus all of our attention on one day of the year. That was my mindset. And maybe that's part minimalism and part stress reduction and part financial reduction. But really, I just spent the morning with 2 of my girls, and 2 of them are getting tattoos, and I met them. They asked me to meet them at the tattoo shop and meet the tattoo artists and look at their design and all that. It was a blast. And that's way more fun than me trying to find a $20 gift to give them so that I feel like I've checked it off my list, So it was
Yeah, I think
more.
it's really interesting how you're like, it's almost like the stress or the bigness and the volume of what you had to deal with made it so that you could really focus on the actual priorities. You could let go of everything extraneous and really just focus on the actual priority, which I think many of us don't get a chance to do that because we don't have that kind of situation. We don't have like 18 kids, we got like 2 or something. And so we just kind of keep tolerating through like, I definitely know that there's like, if it was me, if I had my preference, if I had my dream would have been that when my son moved back in, my other son was like, hey, I'm only here half the time. Why don't we just share a bedroom? That would have been very generous, now wouldn't it? That would be very generous, very loving, and very kind. And I noticed that invitation didn't happen and is not forthcoming. So I also noticed that as a mother, and I look at that and I say, wow, there's some lessons to learn here in terms of like, how do you treat your family and how do you take care of others? And how do you share of your your time, your talent, and your treasure? How do you do that with other people? And there's lessons that need to be learned, and I'm not going to be able to teach all those lessons in the 3 years I have left, or 1 year, actually 1 year at home that I have left. So those are things that I'm going to be watching evolve over years. So
And I was
this
forced
job is
into it
not
by.
done.
Right. Yeah, well, no, and it never is. And I mean, I came from absolute dysfunction and below poverty, and I I think it depends on the person too. I learned how to be frugal. I learned how to fix things because we grew up below poverty. If the cable didn't work, we couldn't call somebody to come fix it. If the toilet was broken, thinking about calling a plumber, like, I learned how to do all those things because it was necessary. But holy cow, I've got like these amazing weird skills that I may not use very often. But when the girls are like, hey mom, the door's not shutting right, I got it, man. It either needs soap or a sander, or we need to tighten this. Like, I can fix almost everything. And so my kids learned, one, because I didn't have a high income. I mean, I was probably right at poverty level. Even though I didn't get outside help, I was struggling financially to have this many kids, but they were my priority. So the struggle was worth it because they were what I wanted more. But my kids learned how to fix stuff. You know, one of my girls had a car, and she's like, "Oh, the electrical needs to be rewired." And I'm like, "Oh, well, what are you going to do?" And she's like, "Well, I've got a friend who is studying to be an electrician in school, and I have the manual, so I'm going to learn how to rewire a car." Yes,
Yeah, it's
yes.
great.
Please be resourceful. I'm not good at everything. Somebody asked me once, a friend of mine, like, "Are you good at everything you do?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't do the stuff I'm not good at. I find somebody who is, and it's called a resource. I don't feel bad that I can't do something. If you're really good at something and I'm not, I'll be like, Carrie, can you help me? I I don't know how to do that, and you're really good at it. Anytime an Excel spreadsheet needs to be made, I have a friend, and I'll just be like, "Hey, Diana." She's like, "What sheet do you need made?" "Thank you." She can do it in 2 minutes. Where I'll like literally be smashing my computer against a wall, right? So no, yes, I'm good at everything I do. I find resources for the stuff I'm not good at. And so my kids have learned that I am very resourceful, and I learn a lot of stuff so that I don't have to pay to get fix the toilet. You don't need to pay to snake the drain. I'll come do it for you. It's cool. I got it. So I think because we were in I was raised in that situation, and I just took that opportunity to learn how to fix the cable. Um, and then I had a lot of kids, and so I had to look at situations very outside the box and think, okay, how am I not going to wash 5,000 cups a day? I I
I love your
just
solution to that, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I tried
everybody's
to do
color
that with
coded.
towels, and they all.
Everything.
I tried to do that with towels, and they dismissed the idea readily because they started realizing that, oh, it was going to be really obvious who left their towel on the floor.
I color coded everything. Their towels were colored, like everything in my house.
That's so great.
Every kid gets 2 towels, and they're color coded. End of story. Yeah, I mean, so I think I've been blessed with the ability, or I've capitalized, or I've learned the ability to think outside the box to make a solution for something that seems a little overwhelming. And that doesn't mean there weren't overwhelming times, or times that, a few days ago, I like to, I sit in my bathroom and have a good cry. I'm good at crying in the shower. It's my favorite. So when I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed, or there's a situation that I'm really struggling with, it's not like I don't have those moments and then I don't cry my eyes out for a while. And when I did, Dane looked at me and he's like, "Let me know when you're ready to talk." And I got it out of my system, and then I was ready to talk, and then we moved on. I mean, but I think, I've had kids. I have a son who's been missing for over 3 years. I've had 3 kids that have had suicide attempts. I have kids that have had drug use. I've had kids who have been sexually assaulted. I had a daughter that was pregnant at 17. It's not like I've gone through probably every situation with my kids that I never wanted to go through with anybody. Um, and it's not like those things don't happen, but I think, again, because I just had this positive out of the box way of thinking about it. So going back to Christmas, Christmas is financially stressful. Christmas is stressful just to think of what to get for certain people. And some kids are easy to buy for and some aren't. And I just wanted to eliminate. I looked at that as a source of stress that I could completely eliminate. So I did. So when you turn 18, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I would rather do small things throughout the year. There's more bang for your buck in doing that because I spend more time and more money throughout a year than I do on one day. But also our kids know, one, we're a safety net. If they need to move back in, we're here for them.
Although if you move into an RV, there's not going to be very much room for them to do
Well,
that.
we're at 1,000 square feet now. We have continued to downsize. And so one of our daughters came back from college and decided she wanted to stay here instead of going back to a college out of state. And she's like, "I can't live in my house." And she is technically my stepdaughter, but she's like, "I can't stay in this house." And I said, "I don't have a house so that an adult child can stay in it. That's not my goal." And she goes, "Wow, Momsy, that's harsh." And I'm like, "I'm not saying it to be harsh. My goal was to raise you to be an adult. You didn't give a crap when you decided to go out of state and the cost and tuition. Like, that was your choice and you did it, hell or high water. I am not maintaining a shrine to you as an adult in the event that you need me as a safety net. When you move out and you make that decision, I'm changing my lifestyle accordingly. If you want to come back, you can come back in this situation and we're happy to have you back. But I didn't pick a house that you'd like if you decided to not go to college and come back." That's not a put down to her. That's like, I'm here for you all the time. in this parameter.
Hmm.
This is what I'm willing to give you and do. I would much rather, we like to do things differently too. Like, I'll buy you the vacuum for your house. I have a daughter who her due date was yesterday, so she's a day overdue and not particularly happy about that. And so, I'll send her a care package. There's so many things you can do for people throughout the year. Just let them know that you care. Meeting them at the tattoo parlor was an absolute blast, fun way to spend my morning this morning. But I think, yes, I recognize areas that are stressful and I eliminate them or completely change them so that they're no longer stressful.
Well, and I think what's interesting too is that you're very matter of fact about it.
Yeah.
Like you have a very matter of fact way about you. And I think that I can understand that energy works really well when you're in a position of managing a lot of chaos. Somebody like you with that energy is perfect for that environment because you need somebody very efficient and very clear and not like emotional about, not like, you're very clear, like this is the way it's going to work because this is how it works the best for everybody and we got to get through this, this situation is otherwise how are we going to do it? The thing I love about it is that it's really a model for community living. I think just when I look at my kids, I look at the cost of housing is really high, and even in Austin area here is very high. How are they going to get an apartment? They can't get an apartment by themselves. It's $1,600 a month. They don't make that much money, so they can afford like $300 a month. So how can they get a living situation where they can afford $300 a month? And they might not get that by having their own bedroom. They might have to get that by teaming up and sharing a room with another person, which is something that they are personally really uncomfortable with and they don't want to have to do.
I guess, for anybody, your discomfort financially has to be greater than your discomfort sharing a room. It's like with anything. I'm a runner. So if there's somebody who wants to do a couch to 5K, I can be sitting on the couch, feeling overweight and unhappy and knowing I want to make a difference. That couch has to feel worse than running does, than the training does. Or so with anything, with weight loss, with exercise, with anything in your life, that scale, that balance, you can complain about things all you want, how much it costs to live in that apartment. And there's a solution there. And when the cost gets real uncomfortable, the solution's going to seem more appealing. And I think that it's like that with everything. And also, though, I think it's harder for kids. Like, you are where you are based on your choices. But we're really open with our kids. We always have been. And our kids talk to us about a lot of stuff. I'm thankful that they do, and sometimes surprised. And like, if you don't want this to be your life, where are you at? One of our daughters had this roommate that was just toxic and horrible, and she was getting arrested and doing drugs, and because it's like guilt by association, my daughter was getting sucked into this whole lifestyle and choices and driving for her and driving in the car with her and getting into a car accident and her going to jail. I mean, all this crap. And I just looked at her and said, you have anxiety and your life's really stressful. And she's cried and she's like, it's just one thing after another, Mom. And I said, I just want you to think back over the last year of living with this person. And I want you to think of all the times that were really stressful. And she's like, okay. Like the top like 5 or 10 that stick out to you. How many of them wouldn't have existed if you didn't have her as a roommate? And she went, wow. Okay, your choices are creating you having the stressful life. At some point, not wanting the stressful life is going to be worth moving out and hurting your friends' feelings or having to move or whatever the reasons are that are keeping you here. That balance. And she moved out. And I said, it's not that stress is going to happen. Your car is going to break down. You're going to get sick. Your boyfriend's going to dump you. Like, stuff happens in life. It's going to happen. But how much of that do you have control over? So if you list out the things in the last year that wouldn't have happened, that you had control over and could have been eliminated, what would your stress level have looked like in the last year? That's all I'm asking you. I'm not telling you I have the answer, because I don't. Just asking the question. And she moved out like 2 weeks later. She was done. So I think sometimes, with kids that are teenagers, they don't see the bigger picture. They haven't had the life experiences. So I feel blessed that our kids actually talk to us. You know,
Yeah, that's a good thing too.
when my daughter's feeling super stressed, I'm the person that gets a call at 1:30 in the morning. So I'm glad, because then I have some life experience. So
Yeah, wow. Well, that's amazing. Boundaries are really important in the situation that you've been in, and for all of us, but it's just highlighted in the situation that you've experienced is highlights the need for boundaries, really clear communication, and a good structure and discipline and keeping all these parts moving and flowing. And that's great. You could probably write a whole book about this. I don't know. Did you write a book about this?
my first book is about it goes from like birth to 21 years old, and the first time I was pregnant and going through infertility, like my whole life in dysfunction. I'm writing a book now, and I have an editor and I have a publisher, and that's the non-parenting parenting book.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
I want to see that
my
when you're done with that one.
my way is not the right way, but definitely I think you're right. I think emotion is really, really important, and I'm a very emotional personality, but it just doesn't belong in certain places. And so I think I just kind of compartmentalized it. I have my emotional moments for sure, and I feel a lot about I mean, feeling is where I go first, but there are times that we get emotional, angry, upset, frustrated, sad, and it just doesn't belong in that situation, because it just makes it so much harder. So in that sense, I've become very logical and structured, and this just works better this way. And I can be emotional when it makes sense, or in my shower,
Your
when it's
shower.
the right time and place.
Well, you know what, Jen, you're really I don't know what I'm really curious what sign you are, like what human
Oh,
design type you are.
okay, I can tell you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I'm Sagittarius. I'm December 15th. And you said human design.
Yeah. Do you know
I've
what your
taken
human
I, I've taken human design, and it means nothing to me. Yep, I'm gonna look it up for you. Let's see. Um, I know my disc. I know my let's human design. I'm a generator.
That's why you can do this. So I'll
Okay, see,
just say, because I was starting to judge myself. I'm like, Carrie, no, just wait. Wait for a second. Just wait for it. Because you're a generator, which means you can do this all day long, every day, like till the end of time. Like
yeah.
I am a manifester by design. I cannot. Like my energy, as soon as my energy is gone, it's just like it's like the balloon is flat. Like it's done. And I'm a hermit opportunist. So I need time
Ah,
alone. Like I need a lot of hermit time. I have to have space out of people's auric fields because I'm a healer. So whenever I'm around people, I'm constantly processing their stuff through my auric field, whether or not I want to, people. Just what happens. And I have good boundaries around that, and it still happens. So it's just part of my function. So I have to have a lot of alone time and a lot of recharge time and a lot of space around me in order to do all that. Because otherwise, I will literally go into the red, and then it's not a fun picture. It's not good. But being a generator, I always admire people that are generators because you're just like the Energizer Bunny. Like, you just keep going
yeah.
and going and going and going and going. And I'm like,
I I don't know what
bye.
I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger, and I don't know what she is, but she's
She's
not
not like you.
remotely me. Right. And she's like, I would get up early. Like, I'm a morning person, so don't talk to me after 8 or 9 p.m. I also know my limitations. Like you
Yeah.
said, you're a flat balloon. Like, I'm on ER duty after 9 p.m. If you're
Yeah.
bleeding
Like
or you have a nightmare, I'm there.
dealing
I'm
with
100%
myself.
there. Like, yeah, I can't.
Checking back in with my inner child after 8 o'clock. Thank you.
I think we need to, like, you need to know who you are and what your boundaries are and stay true to those. And I have. And again, like, I find somebody who can do the things that I can't do. But my sister, I would get up and I'd be like, okay, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. And she's not a morning person. She's like, God, in your first 2 hours, you've exhausted me for the week. Like, I have no energy after your first 2 hours of one day. So I understand that I have to be cautious about my energy with other people. But the other thing is, like, I don't have that intuition, and I don't feel people. And I have a friend who's more like that. And every time she says stuff, I'm like, what's wrong with me? That I
Well,
don't
you're
understand.
just built different because if you could feel
Correct.
all of that, I can guarantee you there's no way you could have held space for the 18 kids. If you
Right.
could have felt
Exactly.
everything that all of them were going through, you couldn't have done it. There's just no way.
Exactly. So there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
by mistake or default or choice or
Or by
whatever.
just plan, soul plan.
Yeah. I
Well, I'm
I
fascinated. I can't wait to hear your not parenting book because I have a feeling that is a really good thing. I think that I'm just guessing that with the amount of chaos in your home and the children and everything that just noticing the four in my house, like just how they are, is that, there's a lot of things that you can only track so many things in these kids at one time. Like stuff's gonna slip by, even with two kids, it'll slip by. So it's actually okay though, because there's like a different concept here of like the soul's journey. Kids are on their own soul's journey, and if you
Mhm.
keep that line of communication open, then they'll come to you when they have something that they can't handle. They will come to you and ask for guidance if you have that line of communication open. But if you're like helicoptering, well,
No,
yeah, I can't imagine
I
that you had any
I
helicoptering
have no helicopter. I
whatsoever.
have
She's
almost none.
landed.
Yes, and I read that parenting information pretty early on, and I thought, oh, I don't ever want to be that way. I mean, I did several things when my kids were young because I knew how I grew up and what things I felt like I needed or I struggled with as an adult. And one of them was kids are going to be faced with making decisions, and some of them are super easy and some of them are not. And so I gave my kids the opportunity when they were younger. I would say no and tell them why. I wasn't the parent that's like, because I said so. I gave them the reason why I'm saying no. And sometimes it's because I don't want to and I'm tired and grumpy. And that doesn't sound like a fun idea. So maybe another day. But I always told them why. And, then I could say yes. And then if I didn't really have a good reason to say no, there was not, I would tell them to convince me because I wanted them to be so good. And some of them were really good at convincing.
Yeah, I've got one that's
Oh,
loves
yeah. I had one. Oh,
to
yeah.
debate.
And
A couple of them.
that did backfire a little bit. There were times in their life where I was said, I'm not asking to be convinced. I'm letting you know the answer. And as the adult and the parent, that's the end of the line. But for the most part, it worked really well. I wanted them to learn how to make decisions on having green hair and shaving, like stupid stuff where like,
That's what I'm saying. Like letting them actually do that, I think is good. It's important to let kids do stupid stuff like that when they're young, so they can really like understand why maybe they don't want to do that later.
or that when they're faced with a decision and they're a 15-year-old girl in the backseat of a car with a boy. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be faced with situations where you're making choices or standing up for yourself. And I wanted to give them a lot of skills with things that weren't that important. Like, so if it wasn't physically or morally harmful, it's good. It's game on. And they could make the decision. And yes, I wanted for many, many years to have pins that said, today I dressed myself, or I chose my own haircut, or because parents are like, why would you ever allow that? It's not physically or morally harmful. So if I have an issue with it, it's my problem. It's really not their problem. And so I learned early on to let go of a lot, or I would have driven myself crazy. And it helped them be able to make some of their own
It
decisions.
helps
So
them make their, yeah, exactly. And I follow a lot of the same. The thing I've noticed is it makes for messy childhoods or messy teenagehoods where they look like maybe they're not doing so well, according to societal standards. Like to other people that have everything dialed in and like controlled, it looks like your kid's just a total wreck, but actually your kid's not. It's like your kid is actually, there's like so much going on underneath the surface that of like trying things and really engaging it and kind of tearing it on and like, yeah, I'm gonna find out who I am. That's all looks like so messy, but all of that, like, then it blossoms, right? Later, then you're like, whoa, look at this person, but the one that was never allowed to take chances or take risks, or that's why I did what I did, because I had that like terrified to make my own decision for so long, and I'm a manifester by design. I'm supposed to be making decisions and invitations. Like that's my role. So if I'm not doing that, then stuff doesn't happen, so anyway, I think it's, we're all going to parent our own way. It's a journey. It's for us too. Like we get to learn about ourselves as well. So.
Well, we're growing up with them. And when, my daughter that's overdue by one day today, I can tell her that, and it probably won't make sense. Yes, you're an adult and you're married, you have a mortgage and a car and the dog and all those things. And that's all fine, but you are going to grow up parenting this child in ways that are totally unexpected, right? And
Totally.
so if you know that and you kind of you allow that to happen, then there's a lot less friction, but not always. They can
Well,
be a hot mess on the outside. I don't care if they're a hot mess on the outside. I never cared. You
yeah,
know,
the hot mess on the outside, it's totally fine.
it's totally fine with me.
Awesome. Well, I love this. This has been great. What a great conversation. I really loved hearing all your insights from raising such a large family, so many kids, and we didn't even get into the naked podcasting, but
Ah.
I think we're like, stay tuned for part 2 another
I
time.
do podcast. Yes, I am the naked podcaster.
She's the naked podcaster. So check out
I
her
let
show.
people know ahead of time, like, you're going to see my shoulders, so you have to be comfortable with that, because
She really is naked
my
behind the
collarbone.
monitor.
Yes, I am.
So check it out on iTunes, right? It's on iTunes.
It's everywhere. I'm on 32 platforms. The easiest way to find everything is just momof18.com. That's every social media link and every place you can find everything. But if you search the Naked Podcaster, it'll pop up on every platform. And if you search Mom of 18, it pops up everywhere too.
Awesome. So go like and subscribe to that, everybody. So you'll get to check out Jenn in her own forum.
Mm.
And of course, like and subscribe to Soul Nectar Show, and like and subscribe and comment on this episode and share it out to anybody you know who's like complaining about like 1 or 2 kids.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Or not. Anyway,
it's not a competition.
That is not a competition. I would put myself in that category. I learned a lot by listening to you, Jenn, because I'm like, yeah, I get inundated by just four children in the house, and it's like, whoa, my mind's blown. So it's good. It's also a manifester. Hermit. I'm a hermit, people. I only opportunists to come on the show. So I hope you guys have a really great week in between now and our next episode. And I'd like to give kisses on the way out. Would you like to help me give kisses, Jenn?
Yes.
Okay, here they come, everybody. Love you guys. Love you, and see you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Thanks for coming on the show, Jenn.
Thank you.
Bye for now.